When I was younger, I didn't have a lot of money to buy video games. At the same time, I wasn't allowed to buy games that were rated M, so the chances of me getting a game during that time were pretty slim. I was a pretty cheap kid, and I would always make sure that what I would buy would at least be worth my time. Flash forward years later, and nothing has really changed. I'm still a pretty cheap person, so... But anyway, good games that were not rated M were hard to come by for me. That was until I decided to look at some online forums to see what awesome games I could get that would at least be worth my time. This is where Metroid Prime comes in. I kept hearing people say that Metroid Prime was the best GameCube game ever, so obviously I took the internet's word for it and decided I was going to get it. Because we know everything on the internet is true, so I can't argue with that. It's the internet. So I did the only reasonable thing and I stole the game. You know, like a normal person. Since that fateful day, I've been playing it ever since. And since I have nothing else better to do with my worthless life, I thought I'd just talk about it with you guys. Back in the early 2000s, the GameCube was at its prime. Well, that was until the Xbox and PlayStation brutally beat it back to the ground with no remorse. But besides that, Nintendo had actually released some pretty good games, such as Super Smash Bros. Melee, Luigi's Mansion, The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. But there was one game series that Nintendo had not picked up in nearly a decade. That being the Metroid series. In 2002, Retro Studios developed Metroid Prime. When fans heard the news that there was going to be another Metroid game, they rejoiced. But then they figured out it was going to be a first-person shooter, they immediately turned around, had a hissy fit, and called the game crap, since it wasn't going to be a 2D scroller just like the originals. The same thing happened to The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. Since the game had cartoony graphics, apparently it meant that the game was going to suck. Now people consider it to be one of the best games in the franchise. Metroid Prime takes place after the original Metroid, after the bounty hunter Samus Aran destroys the planet Zebes, home of the space pirates, the main antagonists of the series. Years pass and she's told to investigate a distress signal coming from an incoming space frigate, which, surprise, is owned by the space pirates. Long story short, you battle your way through, defeat a boss called the Parasite Queen, which in my opinion has an awesome theme, which falls into the main core, which causes the whole station to get destroyed. You run into Ridley, Samus's nemesis, and go after him. Oh yeah, and did I also mention you lose most of your powers as well, because it happens and it really sucks. To be honest, I don't see the reason behind losing all your stuff later in the game if you're just going to end up getting them back. It just seems like a waste of time. While it is a minor complaint, I would have just preferred keeping those powers. You continue to follow Ridley to the planet Talon 4. This is where your journey begins. When I first landed on the planet, I couldn't help notice how fantastic and beautiful the graphics were. For a game made in 2002, you have to admit this looks awesome. Heck, even when you look up, you get little droplets of water landing on your helmet. This game was so ahead of its time. Most of the environments fit perfectly with that feeling of isolation and wonder. You have locations such as Magmore Caverns, Chozo Ruins, Talon Overworld, Phazon Mines, and my personal favorite, Phendrana Drifts. It's my favorite because 1, I love snow levels, and 2, the music is just fantastic. And if you don't believe me, then just listen to it for yourself. Speaking of the music, this is my favorite video game soundtrack right next to Silent Hill 2. I usually listen to it when I'm either studying for a test or a quiz for school, or I'm drawing something during my free time. While the soundtrack is unforgettable, there is a feature in the game that I always seem to forget about, and that feature was scanning. In the game, you're able to scan objects, alien species, bosses, and space pirate data. You're even able to look at lore from the Chozo, an alien species that used to reside on the planet before a meteor came down and almost killed everybody. While the scanning is optional, if you want to unlock the galleries full of artwork that you get after finishing the game, you're going to have to scan everything. And sure, sometimes it could seem like a drag, but I didn't really mind it. Luckily, when you scan things, everything around you freezes. That way nothing can attack you while you're reading certain information. Kind of like New Vegas, but this time it actually kind of makes sense. Luckily, this game is backtracking as well. So if you end up missing something or end up remembering a puzzle that you need to figure out that's in another location, you can always go back. So after gaining a couple of upgrades for the Morph Ball suit and cannon, and attempt to research what's been happening with the space pirates, you start to figure out that they're experimenting with this material known as Phazon. Most of the bosses that you encounter are either made or mutated by the Phazon that the space pirates have been using on certain species, themselves, and a pile of rocks. Yeah, that's right, rocks. I guess they ran out of ideas by then. For most of these bosses, you'll be forced to use most of the upgrades that you've gained over time. Whether it be a cannon upgrade or a morph ball upgrade, I will guarantee that you will at least use it once in the game. I'll definitely be using these upgrades against the final boss, Metroid Prime. While it did take me a long time to figure out how to beat it, the boss seemed pretty easy, so. To this day, Metroid Prime will always be my favorite Metroid game. Next to Super Metroid, that is. And while Prime did get sequels, they'll never be able to outlive the original. I really wish Nintendo comes out with another Metroid game. And yes, while we did get Metroid Other M, which sucked in my opinion, and Federation Force, I just want to play a regular Metroid game where I play as Samus and just do what the Prime series and the original games did. But while I have to deal with Nintendo shoving Mario games at our faces for years to come, I'll always be waiting.